Hello, everybody, and welcome to Retail Dialogue Supply Chain Efficiency Through Intelligence. A few logistics before we start. This is going to be a recorded webinar, so if you do not want to be on a recorded line, please hang up now. Also, at the very end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Please enter any questions that you may have throughout the presentation in the Questions tab, and we'll address those at the end. With that, thank you so much for joining us for Retail Dialogues Supply Chain Efficiency Through Intelligence. I would like to introduce you to our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Mr. Ajay Aggarwal. He is the Global Head Retail Nihilent. Ajay brings more than 3 decades of successful association with the global retail and e-commerce industry as an entrepreneur, advisor, as well as practitioner. He has pioneered product development for the global retail industry since 1996 with success. His industry insights help him engage with retail brands to help them mitigate their business challenges. Our second speaker for today is Mr. Ranjin Sharma. He is CIO and head of SCM Bestseller. Ranjan is an experienced head of information technology with a demonstrated history of working in the retail industry. Skilled in operations management, IT strategy, management, warehouse operations, and SAP ERP. Strong operations professional, graduated from MBA American Institute International University of Management and Technology. Ranjan joined Bestseller in 2012 as head of IT and supply chain management and is currently the CIO and head of supply chain. In his current role, he is responsible for orchestrating the company's IT roadmap, business process design, system and process implementation, solution rollout, review, and maintenance. Our third speaker for today is Mr. Swarnadeep Bandyopadhyay, Head Planning, Spencer Retail. Swarnadeep is a mechanical engineer from MIT Manipal and did his MBA from IIM Lucknow in 2009. He has 12 years of hardcore supply chain experience with companies like JSW Steel, Cargill Foods, PepsiCo, IFCO, Flipkart, and currently he heads planning and supply chain of Spencer's Retail Limited. With that, I would like to hand it over to Ajay.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And lovely to have our two guests. Unfortunately, we can't see Swarnadeep because there's some camera issue at his end. And welcome to all of you for our new season of Retail Dialogue, Supply Chain Efficiency Through Intelligence. We have all going through a terrible time, especially retail industry, and most impacted in the retail industry has been supply chain, which is impacted not only from the supply side, but also from the consumer behavior and various other logistics and operational issues. There's been a lot of disruption in this whole space. And I think this whole episode of 15 months has brought in a lot of changes, a lot of new insights, a lot of new opportunities to solve these problems and be ready for any such future things. Before I move forward, I mean, we will, during this discussion, the idea is that we'll discover a lot of new areas. Before I move forward, I will request Cheryl to give you a small introduction of Nihilent, and then we'll take it forward.
Thank you, Ajay. Today, enterprises are facing revolutionary changes that demand businesses to become increasingly agile, efficient, consistently profitable, and reasonably sustainable. All this while maintaining customer centricity at the heart of their operations. At Nihilent, we enable enterprises to solve business problems and manage business transformation with solutions built around a human-centric approach. With a presence across 5 continents and 16 offices worldwide, we've been the change management partner for a vast array of global clients over the last 2 decades. Our work primarily is at the intersection of physical, emotional, and digital touchpoints to truly evaluate the overall human experience. With a large and diverse set of capabilities, we deliver solutions with a clear vision, robust strategy, and impactful implementation, while maintaining an unwavering focus on human, business, and technology, humanizing business and technology. Within the same context, our retail capability suite follows the principles of a consumer-centric approach across different areas and stages of change management. Nihilent's business transformation journey covers three areas. Business strategy consists of the creation of concepts, identification and development of formats, designing growth and turnaround strategies. Consumer centricity for us involved category management, assortment analysis, planning, development of private labels, and running successful loyalty programs. Our operational efficiency capabilities positively impact customer experience, increase productivity for retail stores, minimize operational costs, and improve the sourcing process. In fact, we have successfully employed various capabilities across physical plus digital experiences for renowned brands across geographies. Built in-store innovative experiences are only part of a larger story. We have successfully deployed advertising and marketing services for digital brands like Nestle and Tata Trent. Our digital marketing services for retail and CPG brands cover e-commerce implementation, digital advertising and marketing, market research, content development across formats and platforms, analytics with not just statistical data, but with the emotional response of consumers to brand as well, so through our patented IPs. Long-standing associations with global brands are proof of our commitment to providing impactful and sustainable marketing solutions. Nihilent's retail capabilities on SAP implementation involve S/4HANA, SAP SuccessFactors, SAP Analytics Cloud Support, and SAP Cloud Platform to serve practically every single purpose a retailer might have. Success stories of some of the most loved retailers in India are testament to our capabilities and execution powers. Furthermore, our capabilities in business intelligence and advanced analytics are powered by an experienced team of data scientists and analysts. With these capabilities, we sort and analyze internal databases, the audit of structured and unstructured data across domains. With external data, we gather through the analysis of structured data of external factors like currency, census, competitions, and price hikes through the audit of unstructured data available on websites and social media. Our expertise in advanced analytics comes from gathering knowledge through statistical analysis, machine learning, and data mining with the support of powerful tools. And with this robust background in decades of industry expertise and deep domain knowledge of the retail industry, we present to you Resense, a platform that enables retailers to run their businesses intelligently by learning from their own data collected from a multitude of sources. Today, most retailers face a few key issues when it comes to planning. First, what can I offer that is best suited for each market and customer segment? Second, can I predict the best possible stocking scenarios? Third, what could be the price that keeps my inventory moving smoothly? And fourth, can I predict sales from various geographies and markets? For a retailer, the automated replenishment models can be good enough to ensure higher fill rate using traditional methods, with each category given by its own days of holding standards, ensuring optimum inventory load and higher trading margins become imperative. Resense even helps manage fill rates between 90 to 100%, which is core to maximizing basket value and a wholesome consumer experience. With a unified view of the supply chain across all stocks, Resense advanced sales forecasting helps you achieve a supply chain model of peak efficiency. In addition, one of the biggest advantages of Resense is assortment management. With deep analysis of diverse data points that involve a specific range of offerings for each market. Demographics, the impact of local and national events, product launches, and seasons with weather changes. Resense makes your supply chain effective and efficient in the truest sense. The platform identifies products that consumers take interest in, analyzes high-frequency and low-frequency products against inventory, and in turn optimizes demand and supply basis insights derived from the segmentation. In essence, Resense is the sixth sense for all your retail businesses. The magic of Resense sales forecasting is evidently visible in optimizing the impact of recency of historical data, refinement of forecast model basis, external factors, model development by learning from calculating new data, and accuracy improvement by a diverse ensemble of forecasts. Resense achieves accuracy in sales forecasting by using machine learning, univariate time series based on past trends, multivariate time series that involves external and internal demand drivers, and taking care of lumpy and intermittent demand patterns. You might ask, what makes Resense different? Well, Resense includes the usage of external factors that affect your retail businesses, such as promotions, holidays, festivals, weather to predict demand for your stock, so you're always ahead of the game. With short-term and long-term forecasting, Resense positively keeps your focus not just on the present, but on the future as well. The classical time series based forecasting and advanced MLC basis uses forecasting provides a robust and rich library for your deep analysis and forecasting for your businesses. In addition, Resense optimizes data regency for intelligent analysis with an ensemble of multiple forecasts to improve the accuracy of predictions. What's more, Resense keeps on learning from calculations made on fresh data sets. With Resense V1, you would be able to manage days of holding budget for each category. The automated indenting services reduce the operational hassles so you can concentrate on greater growth. The management of fill rate across stocking points ensures that your business remains profitable even when the circumstances are at odds. The dynamic price management at SKU and PIN code level allows you to attract customers across geographies and market segments. The merchandise management dashboards allow you to keep a track of everything that makes your brand click. In conclusion, Resense is a part of the larger universe of our capability suite that involves specialized divisions like Nihilent Analytics, Hypercollective for advertising and marketing inventions, and Intellect for impactful SAP implementation. Our technology stack covers the entire spectrum from front end to back end, from middleware, digital DevOps, database management, analytics, and cloud computing. What delights us even more are our products and IPs that cover emotional analytics, weather analytics, virtual e-com, and medical platforms. All these capabilities serve one unified version for us, elevating human experience for our clients and their businesses across the world with effective use of technology. With this summation, we thank you for your time, hoping you enjoyed this presentation. We look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Ajay.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thank you very much. That was lovely. And now we have two experts with us, and we will pick their brains on how we are all running a supply chains, how we actually make a supply chain more intelligent what it is today. We are not here to talk about how to build supply chain and how to drive supply chain. The idea is to, and Ranjan Sharma is an old friend and colleague from the industry. I have huge respect for him from the kind of profile he has built in over a period ever since I've known him almost around 15, 16 years now. Swarnadeep, I have known him recently, but I have huge respect based on whatever interactions I've had with him. I think he has got a deep understanding. He takes up the whole matter of supply chain and planning very, very seriously, like a professor. And that's the comment I would make. Unfortunately, Swarnadeep, we can't see you today because of whatever technical issue we have, and we'll miss you on the screen. But anyway, looking forward to an exciting discussion with both of you. So let me come to you, Swarnadeep, first, and let me give you the advantage since you're not on the screen and to make your presence felt. As an essential retailer, will you briefly highlight the impact of a pandemic on your business, on your supply chain, and especially when you had to suddenly ramp up the supplies and you have to also fight with other challenges in terms of customer behavior and other issues like COVID protocols, certain stores openings or not opening. That would be interesting to know what kind of impact you had on your planning and supply chain.
Thanks, Ajay, for the opportunity. So basically, the biggest impact of pandemic for us in the grocery retail business has been majorly into three buckets. right? So one is, of course, maintaining the in-stock levels at the store to drive the customer experience, right? Number one. And that has been predominantly because of two factors. One is the variabilities on the demand front, and one the disruptions on the supply front. Now, speaking of the variabilities on the demand front, so the consumer behavior over the course of last 15 months has changed drastically. So if I take the example of FMCG products, like for example Chyawanprash or tea for that matter, which were considered to be products, at least certain variants of that would be selling only during the winter seasons. That entire gamut of historical data is out of the window, right? Because the
Mm.
people were starting to live in their houses, and this cyclicity, this entire piece of seasonality was thrown out of the window. So irrespective of whatever the forecasting engine that you actually deploy, right, these things will not get captured, and hence that impacts your in-stock levels to a greater extent. Because as a planning team of a grocery retail business, you always try to balance the the short-term needs with the long-term needs. And what do I mean by that? So what I mean by that, that we should be planning ahead of time, which means that the cyclicity and the seasonality of the business is already taken into account when we are actually indenting the material requirements to our suppliers. So that was something which was very challenging, and it is still a challenge. But yes, we have sort of come to terms with it. We have figured out sort of workarounds around it. The other predominant challenge that we have faced on the supply front is basically the supply disruptions, right? So the supplier fill rates have been at an all-time low, and when I say all-time low, it is predominantly because of a few reasons. Majority of the suppliers have actually stopped doing their entire range of SKUs. So when I talk about in-stock levels, I'm obviously talking about the entire range of the entire portfolio of the supplier which is listed with us. So they are more they are dedicating more of their.
We lost you, Surandeep. There is a connection issue.
Hello, is
Yeah,
it
we are
fine?
back. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So
We are back.
what I was saying is that on the supply front, there have been intermittent supply disruptions, even from the big suppliers across all the categories I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about only FMCG, but also staples, general merchandise, electrical and electronic appliances. So I'm talking about all the categories put together, and this has been a challenge, which has a direct impact on the in-stock levels, and hence driving the customer experience from all channels of business. When I say all channels of business, it not only means the store walk-ins, but also means the deliveries that we're doing for the orders which we get via phone orders, the e-commerce channel deliveries. So there, it has created a significant amount of impact. The second bucket where we are feeling the heat over the course of last 15 months is basically to maintain optimized inventory levels, right? Because what has happened is that the non-food segment, the general merchandise, and I'm not talking about the grocery non-food, obviously that has also slowed down a bit, but in comparison to its food counterparts. But I'm talking about the essentially the non-food categories, like general merchandise, like apparel, like electrical and electrical appliances category. So for these particular categories, it has the sales has significantly slowed down compared to what it was 15 months back. And pre I'm talking about the pre-pandemic era. And that has created some amount of challenge on managing the working capital exposure, because obviously a certain amount of inventory gets stuck in the system, and the sell-throughs have dipped further. It normalized to a certain extent December onwards, and then again dipped March 21 onwards. So that has the brunt of that is being actually being borne by a lot of food segmented categories, right?
Uh,
Because of the ability, or not I would say the willingness of not overexposing the working capital, or not increasing the inventory beyond a certain point, right? So
Right.
hence, that actually has a lot of impact. The third biggest bucket, which I feel has been lacking, is basically in terms of the responsiveness through technology. Now, what do I mean by that? So basically, all sorts of customer behavior, or the consumer purchase behavior analytics being built into the system, so that our replenishment systems actually take care of that. So that responsiveness, because essentially we work on SAP. Most of the companies are working either on SAP or on Oracle platforms, and there is a certain amount of rigidity in the modules that we are actually operating on. Right now, of course, there are certain customizations, but the responsiveness, the flexibility, the agility that we would require to be built when it comes to automated replenishment systems is something where we feel that it has been a challenge in the last
Hmm.
15 months, and that could have
So we'll
imparted
come to that. We'll come to that, Swarnadeep. Yeah. So let me go to Ranjan. Ranjan, you were on the other side of the pandemic, where you were not doing business, your stores were shut, your inventory was stuck inside the stores. And what was your impact on you, and what was your experience?
So I think, thanks Ajay. So I think the biggest impact has again has been similar in terms of the demand side, uh, where customers have moved on to different channels. So channel shift has been a big one which has impacted us, uh,
Mm,
where our majority of our fulfillments, or majority of the sales which was earlier which was generated by the brick and mortar stores, uh, they gradually started moving in a big way, because most of the brick and mortar stores were shut.
mm,
So a lot of that demand started coming in from e-commerce stores, which was not something that we had planned for or we had budgeted for, or so the supply chain was not geared up to handle that. So that was one big
mm,
shift for us that came in. uh, the other piece was also being able to manage in terms of lower manpower, because manpower was not available due to the pandemic. A lot of people were not there. A lot of people had moved on. So manpower was a huge challenge. Uh, the restrictions in different zones, different areas, were creating more problems in terms of deliveries. Uh, the uh, the visibility in terms of which store, what timing, uh, which area would be operational, and then how do you fulfill that store, or how do you deliver to that store? The entire logistic had to be revamped. Uh, the demand shift also brought in newer challenges in terms of making our inventory available in different zones to be able to cater to the demand. So that whole network revamp was done in terms of creating a redundancy into the supply chain. uh, the fulfillment strategies were changing. The whole strategies in terms of how do you get the merchandise. One, the factories are also equally impacted. So whatever you needed might not have been available at that point of time, but what you did not need might already be there in the distribution center and the stores, and you might have the manufacturer also ready with that same product. So how do you manage that kind of a supply chain in terms of being able to maybe bring in that merchandise or hold it or park it in some place, so that you don't choke up your supply chain in your distribution center and your stores, because the stores are not selling. How do you manage? And we have a huge challenge in terms of managing the seasonality, because we are into fast fashion
mm,
category. Seasonality is a huge issue for us. So if something doesn't sell, we are almost kind of working on perishables, where if it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell, and you are stuck, and you have to go ahead and do a markdown, which means also effectively being able to manage that inventory across different channels, leverage the inventories also which were lying there in the stores unused if they were locked in. But the bigger challenge was, how do you
mm,
still, even if you are able to leverage them, how do you fulfill from those stores? How do you ship from those stores? Because they would be under different restrictions, different guidelines, and different zones, different reasons. Different malls will have different timings. So I think supply chain overall, from a logistic point of view, became highly complex. But this also gave us a lot of uh, 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 it gives us a lot of push to be able to relook and leverage our entire capabilities around the entire supply chain, and be able to move things in a manner where we could make the inventory, which is the biggest investment from a fashion retailer, a more in a sense which could generate more revenues and be able to suffice or maybe cover up from some of the losses that we were making from the other channels.
So, Swarnadeep, I want to ask one question from you. You have come from Flipkart, which is a pure play online, retailer, and then you came into this retail where is a multi-channel retail, where in store as well as online. So, in your opinion, what do you think? What do you think is the difference in the challenges from pure play online to a multi-channel retailer?
Uh, so for a actually online retailer, there is only one channel that you actually sell from, right? Although there are certain variations in terms of the business. How do you conduct the business? So whether you want to be a marketplace, whether you want to be a completely first party stock holding business, or is it completely be a pure marketplace, or is it something in between, right? That advantage you do have as an online retailer, but then the mode of doing business, the channel of doing business is only one, and uh, and hence you actually reach out to only so many customers, whereas as a retailer, as a
Sandeep, I am trying to ask you from the supply chain point of view, what is different? Being here you are running stores, and from stores you have to not only cater to the customers walk in, but also you have to do the last mile delivery for the online orders. Whereas
you have
there
to
you are
hold a
doing
lot of inventory. You have to you have to hold a lot of inventory. You really cannot have an asset light model in a brick and mortar retail system. What do I mean by an asset light model? Wherein in an online, if you are an online retailer, you can actually put a lot of SKUs on a pre-order model or a launch model, wherein you do not have to hold the inventory, and you gather the orders and you order from the supplier basis those confirmed orders from from the customer. Whereas orienting yourself to this mode of supplies and mode of deliveries to the customer in a normal brick and mortar retail format is a little challenging, right? Number one.
Mm.
Number two is that although the brick and mortar retailer has the advantage of diversifying into other channels of business, it also runs the risk that since it is diversifying into other channels of business, the working capital exposure in terms of the inventory will run into more challenges. Also, the synchronization of the customer deliveries, right? How do you manage that? Do you have a dark store kind of a thing to manage that? Would you like to deliver the customer deliveries from a central warehouse? Would you use certain of your stores to be the dark stores? So these kind of decision points is what probably can give an edge, or probably prove to be a disadvantage both for the brick and mortar retailer. So that is where I feel that the supply chain challenges lie.
Yeah. So now let's come to the KPIs. Let's move towards KPIs. Now, Ranjan, normally the KPIs have 3 or 4 functions. One is to satisfy the CFO, then the management, and the operations team, and obviously the supply chain head, from the point of view. What do you think has changed? Looking at all these challenges which we talked about just now, the series of challenges between you and Swandeep, how the KPIs are influenced, and how the standards have changed, or some budgets have changed.
I think Ajay, there were only two KPIs, or the two focus areas that remained for us. One was satisfying the sales guys or the revenue side. The other was
Mm.
in terms of how aligning the KPIs to your CFO. That were the
Mhm.
only two, because this was also a time when you had to also survive the organization, where majority of your revenue is not coming. Uh, and how do you enable from a supply chain perspective to maximize whichever whatever channels that were operating? How do you maximize from those channels The other piece was also about ensuring that the more you are able to deliver, the better you are able to improve on your fulfillment rates, the better is your delivery timelines, in spite of all the logistical challenges where you have a lot of pin codes not being serviceable, a lot of areas being blocked, a lot of markets not being available. In spite of all of that, revenue maximization was the biggest KPI. And obviously that led to many other KPIs within the supply chain in terms of fulfillments and everything, which was helping out the CFO to be able to manage the cash flows, because the biggest challenge was managing the cash flow during the pandemic uh, for us.
So in Sandeep, in your case, because you had to go in overdrive suddenly, right? Because you had a lot of pressure in terms of deliveries, and suddenly there was a rush. As I said, you added online channel also, or various other channels you opened up. For example, a lot of essential retailers are going into the societies and WhatsApp ordering, and they opened a lot of new channels. How did that affect your whole KPI, visibility from the point of view of fill rate and all your DOH? I mean, were you able to cater to all that?
See, we started monitoring a lot more KPIs actually, once the pandemic started, because, that was probably, we thought was the best strategy, and, the need of the hour as well, to cater to the business needs. The first one is obviously the in-stock levels, right? So, it all boils down to what is the availability of the material at the store. And whatever the material that is available at the store is not only available for the people who are walking into the store, but also who are calling up the nearest store for the deliveries, or who are actually going to the Spencer's app and trying to shop from there, right? Because there is no segregated space for keeping the inventory as such, right? So obviously the in-stock levels was something, but however we had different segments to it. So which means that if we know that there are going to be supply disruptions from the suppliers on a constant basis, right? Be it for any reason. I mean, they are probably affected by manpower issues, because manpower is getting affected because of the COVID, or their factories are in the containment zone. So be whatever the reason it is, right? So different segmentation means that we have, let's say, ultra fast moving key value items, let's say. So what is the in stock levels uh, against that KVIs, versus what is the overall in stock levels that we are actually delivering. So these, and I'm just giving you the glimpse of it, so it's just the tip of the iceberg. So these kind of segmentations actually helped us. Number one. Number two is that we started having a very comprehensive supplier engagement dashboard that not only tracks the supplier fill rates, but also tracks what could have been my opportunity sales loss because of the non-deliveries that happened, especially of the KVIs from that particular supplier. What is the ROI that we are getting? So I mean, does that make business sense that we keep certain amount of days of inventory holding for that particular vendor and not for another vendor? Another key feature which we actually brought in pertaining to the supplier engagement dashboard was the substitutability. So at the start of April last year, many suppliers did not supply us the material that we wanted. So obviously, we had to fill in the gaps from alternate suppliers or alternate brands, competing brands, or private brands, because we already had a certain amount of backups made available through our private brands. So where do we see that which category? So when I say category, it means what is the subcategory, or what is the granular level of segmentation wherein we need to probably see the substitutability factor much more, in a much more detailed manner. And that is where, and why am I talking about this? Because that governs my buying process, and that governs my inventory planning process, and obviously it affects the supply chain in a big way, right? That is number two. And number three is obviously keeping a very constant vigil on the inventory levels, on the days of holding policy as such. I mean, so if I have to, the idea was that, we shifted our gears again, brought in more segmentations to how we look at the DOH. So, we not only look at the DOH, we look at the sell through, we look at the stock rotations, we look at, is it a strategic stock purchase which we are doing, is it a deal purchase that we're doing, or is it completely a replenishment based portfolio that we are actually procuring from the supplier. Obviously the days of holding policies will change, and there will be certain amount of hedging guidelines that, what kind of variabilities on the demand front, on the supply front, are we actually going to hedge through these strategic purchases or these replenishment strategy based purchases, right? So these are some of the KPIs that have exploded into much more detailed in the course of last 15 months.
So, both of you, if I understand, you're using SAP as your core ERP system, and Swarnadeep, you mentioned earlier that there are certain rigidity in such systems from the point of view because they're very traditional, models. Now, with all these things happening and all this churning happening, especially the external factors, which are one is you talked about the customer buying behavior, which means historic data has gone out of the window, and the recent customer behavior becomes more critical and important, and plus COVID protocols and various other things, and now there are issues like local events and other things which impact, especially essential retail. So, do you think there is a complementary technology required on top of these traditional ERPs because they are not able to cater to the needs of the today's evolving needs of supply chain and from the traditional systems, because those are very good for making your supply stock replenishment, but bringing intelligence from the point of view of influence of largely these traditional systems work on historic data, but bringing external factors influence into picture. What is your opinion, Ranjan, and then we move on to Swandeep.
So I think I've been a firm believer that SAP is not the sole system that you do everything with. I firmly believe that SAP is an
I
ERP and it needs to do
only
that.
hope SAP people are not attending the session. So
It doesn't matter, Ajay. So because SAP is an ERP and it needs to be used as an ERP. You can't solve all your problems from an ERP. There are a lot of things that needs to be solved, and we as it is. We don't even try to solve all the problems from the ERP. There are a lot of systems which sit on top of ERP, which leverage the data from the ERP and the other ecosystems which are coming from the point of sale data, from your e-commerce data, from other external data sources that you are getting. You do so many more things outside the system, especially when in these times when newer channels also evolved for which you did not have an history. You never knew. So like we never used to do a wholesale business. It's only last year during the pandemic we realized that we already have an opportunity to start a wholesale business, and we started and we did really well in that space. There are newer channels that we started last year in terms of distribution channels which we never had, and we saw there was an opportunity. How do you get the data? Because the ERP works on a relational database model, and it is very much on past history. Yes, even for any kind of a forecasting you need some amount of data, but data does not needs to be in a structured form. There are tools, there are methodologies that you can there are different models that you can bring in which can sit outside. I firmly believe SAP needs to be used more like an execution system from that perspective, rather than be able to do the whole bit of planning, the data crunching and everything, and bringing in that analytical model, trying to build that analytical model within the ERP. ERP is good to once the order is created. ERP is amazingly good. SAP as an ERP is amazingly good to be able to handle that entire situation once the order is created, right from there on to track the entire fulfillment and be able to ensure and give a report back from there. But the journey before that, I think it definitely needs other systems. We've done a lot of work in that space as well. We used a lot of automation to be able to do a lot of that work in terms of. So we changed our complete replenishment model which used to sit within ERP, within SAP, moved them out and moved them to intelligent automation. We built in all the algorithms, all the logics outside, and used automation to be able to solve that problem for us, to be able to make us more agile, make us more efficient. So I think things have to be done outside. SAP will not solve all the problems is something that I firmly believe. There are many more systems that we use outside SAP, which somewhere or the other they touch SAP, either from taking data from there, or being able to pass on some information back to SAP for execution.
So Sandeep, you mentioned that change in customer behavior, especially, is very, very relevant in your category of essential. And things like supply chain disruption from the supplier side, and then cyclicity and seasonality. How do you deal with this on top of your existing ERP? What are your ideas and what are your thoughts? And like Ranjan mentioned, you need certain intelligence on top of ERP. What are your thoughts on these?
See, I couldn't have agreed with Ranjan more. I mean, so SAP, I am a firm believer, or SAP beat SAP beat Oracle, whatever it is. I mean, any ERP system should be used only for maintaining the data integrity, for fetching the data, and then bringing that data out into an intelligence system, and then from the end-to-end planning process, which means right from demand forecasting till the order generation, right, should be done in that intelligence system, and then that order should be actually fed back to the SAP.
Yeah.
And then once we actually receive the material physically from the supplier, again that intelligence system takes over, which means that once the and let's say I'm talking about a multi-tiered distribution system, right, wherein you have distribution centers in place. You do not have let's say predominant direct store supplies from the vendor. So in that scenario, right, you should be having the intelligence system working for from for the order generation process also, and post GRN or post inwarding the material allocation process also. So that is my personal opinion. Obviously we have tried to tackle this situation. We have had some workarounds. So we have got some web-based applications, open source applications, wherein we have worked out certain time series based, decision tree based, regression based algorithms, which we have applied very successfully actually to our private brand business, especially in staples and FMCG category. We have been able to actually maintain the in-stock levels in almost mid 90s from the time when we started off this. So it has really borne fruit. However, as I said, that the integration with SAP is absolutely not seamless. It is something that we are actually doing outside the system, and then finding a workaround of how to marry that output of demand forecasting, which should translate into an inventory plan and then translate into an order to the supplier eventually. So that workaround is something which we have figured out. But as I said, that the control set on which we have applied the principles that I firmly believe upon is private brand, and we have seen results. And obviously we would like to have a fully dedicated system outside of SAP, which is intelligent enough to actually give us a very agile, a very flexible, and a very intelligent kind of replenishment algorithm. When I say intelligent, it should be able to actually take into account a lot of parameters, like right from how many how many store walk-ins are you actually getting, to how many inquiries you are getting through the other channels of business, to what is your average bill value that is happening from a particular store, what is the catchment area of that particular store in terms of the purchase behavior looking like, and hence that what should be the impact on my buying and inventory strategies. So things like that, and obviously the promotions, the BTL promotions, the ATL promotions being treated separately. What are the significance in terms of its impact on the demand forecasting? So those kind of things is something which needs to be built into the intelligent system, right? And
So then that brings one point, Sandeep, sorry to interrupt you, but you talked about promotion. Suppose in your thing, let's say red label is you are managing tea as a product category, and then Lipton decides to do some promotion on their brand. How does it impact the competitive brands? How do you take that into account in your planning? Do you have any
So
ability to do that?
yeah, absolutely. So we look at it from a, so there is something called as an aggregate group, which we call it internally as a brick, right? You can call it as a subcategory, or you can call it as a aggregate group, right? So again, I mean, that's basically on a particular range, which might be having competing branded products in that particular range.
Yeah,
So
I got it.
if Lipton is, so if Lipton is actually giving us a fantastic promotion on a particular variant, right? So then obviously we would look at the range level planning in terms of the
Okay.
forecasting, and then would derive insights from it, that how should our inventory planning and supply planning should look like, right? Because the inventory norms is not going to change much unless and until we see a you know a and a disproportionate amount of disruption through some activation in the store, or some activation on the e-commerce channel platform, or some amount of activation physically by people throwing pamphlets in the residential societies nearby the store. So unless and until something fantastic activations happen like that, we would not be bullish in taking a huge amount of buffers in our days of holding policies, translating into, again, what is the quantity that we need to buy. And obviously, so there are two factors which actually run into this. Obviously, the DOH is the overall governing principle, but the first and foremost principle is obviously in stock. Secondly, we should be able to maximize the sales for the
Mm.
company. So hence, what is it that actually maximizes the gross merchandise value from the store, and hence the sell through from the store. So which means that the factors like promo sensitivity, price elasticity, and again, the promo sensitivity broken into BTL and ATL separately, what kind of number of bills, what kind of floor walk-ins that I'm expecting, what is the kind of growth that I'm expecting in terms of the customers purchase surge. So these kind of
Yeah.
things should actually need to go into the demand forecasting, and obviously
So
we
Ranjan,
do certain parameters here.
sorry. Ranjan, change in customer behavior, did it reflect on your category also from the point of view of people are working from home and what their preferences of fashion are now different completely? Did you
Yes.
have ability to understand that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there was a huge change in terms of the way how customers used to buy, and party wears had almost gone out of the window,
So
given the situation that people
how
were
do you
working from.
consider that in your planning?
What we did was, or what we realized very early, when the pandemic hit last year, in say end of March, is we realized that a lot of people will be locked in at home for a long time. Uh, but eventually, what is also going to change is people are going to stay connected uh, through digital mediums, which means that there are different set of clothes, and half of your body is at least visible even in a digital medium.
Mm.
So which means
Mm.
like t-shirts and shirts are definitely going to sell. Not shirts much, but t-shirts, basic t-shirts, lounge wears are going to become much more, because people if they are staying at home, they will need comfortable home clothes, which they were earlier not wearing as much, because they were not spending almost about 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours outside the home. So now which they will anyway be using. uh, Work from home is something that we categorize as an overall, from our overall product baskets, in terms of saying what is it that customers would need when they're spending more time at home, and how do we start managing, because we had never planned to be able to deliver to that kind of a demand for those categories, and hence we had to go backwards, work with some dedicated factories to be able to get those products done, so that we are able to manage, and maybe even pull out from some of the channels, those categories, and push it to the channels where majority of the sales was happening. So like we pulled out some of these categories from our stores where it was anyway not selling at that point of time, and moved it to the channels like the digital channels where sales was happening in good numbers.
Mm.
So, but planning for this and keeping that into consideration, one has to keep in mind how the recovery happened, because there was a very uh, a beautiful thing which happened. So something which happened between end of March to maybe June in last year, and July is when the stores started opening up, the market started opening up, and how the recovery happened till December, Jan this year, and the trend that is again being seen this year, there's a big difference between the both. So predictability is not something that there is a pattern, there is a fixed pattern to it. You need to play with certain instincts. It is anybody's guess today in terms of what's going to be the situation, how is the market going to react, how are customers going to react, and where the demand is going to come in what kind of categories. But yes, there are certain assumptions which we have over the past so many years. Some of those assumptions is what we are taking. We are taking a lot of market inputs, customer feedbacks, and we are trying to sense from the digital channels data that we are getting, and trying to relook at our assortment, relook at our plans in terms of what is the kind of merchandise we need.
So one thing is coming out very clearly that we certainly need more intelligent systems on top of the core ERP, which is to help, and largely because now everybody is talking about, now the main thing is about AI ML, which we are talking about, and the whole intelligence is being driven because these trends keep changing, and how do you make your systems learn from its own experience, especially when we are talking the recency of the data becoming more critical in the current scenario. So which means there is a hope for resense going forward. That's quite encouraging. Now, let me ask one question, before we go on to the next level. How do you think is the feasibility of implementing such systems, and what is your expectation from the point of view of because traditionally the systems implementation takes time from 3 months to 6 months to 1 year, core ERP. But systems like this, what is the kind of system you would like to adopt, which from the point of view of technology, from the point of view of ability to incorporate in your existing landscape?
Ajay, do you want me to go with for this question?
Yeah, you start, then we'll go to Swarnadeep after that.
Yep. So I think one of the important factor today is the speed and the agility at which we need to deploy systems and deploy processes. So one thing has to be kept in mind is how do we work with the existing ecosystem, in the ecosystem that we already are, with the kind of systems, because our tech resources are also stretched. They are doing far too many projects that they used to do earlier. And a lot of the focus has also changed in terms of running most of the digital projects. So I think one is to be able to align the business resources and our internal resources, the internal tech resources, to be able to deliver these products, and take a phased approach where instead of delivering projects in months, you have to actually bring it down to weeks. One is that, and we are also in fact ready to not work in an ideal situation, because we are not actually in an ideal world today. Things are changing very fast, and you need to be have the opportunity or the ability to be able to maneuver, to be able to react and make changes and adapt to the changing world today, and be able to keep integrating as you keep going and building these systems. Work on with some semi-automated modes as well, some manual methods as well. I think it's absolutely okay to start things, but yes, the overall aim has to be very clear in terms of how you keep building those processes, because these are not, whatever you build today might not be the final thing that you will run it for years. They might change very quickly.
Swarnadeep, what
So,
will be your?
yeah, so more or less on the lines of what Ranjan said, but my view would be that, a particular controlled set with a controlled scope, and that being done in a phased manner. So which means that a particular category is, let's say, chosen, for which the intelligence system would be executed, and because each category has their own nuances and idiosyncrasies, and hence the need for phased approach is very, very critical, right? uh, the other thing which needs to be looked at is that what is the trade-off. So which means that when you look at a controlled set in a controlled environment, to be able to monitor the performance of the intelligence system, whether they are going to provide any amount of cost effectiveness and sustainability to the organization as such. I mean, when I talk about sustainability, obviously the supply chain is a cost function, and whether we are going to deliver a cost saving or a serviceability improvement, which leads to a improved margin deliveries for the company. So uh, does the intelligence systems that we are actually speaking of lead to that goal or not? Number one. Number two, that the system should have extreme amount of flexibility. Now, why do I say that? So which means that see, talking from let's say populating variables, let's say I mean all the independent variables on which the ultimate dependent variable of, let's say, in stock or inventory norm or sale, whatever that is dependent upon. I mean, so that dependent variable depends on a lot of other independent variables. So being able to populate those independent variables in a manner that we are able to identify that what is the sensitivity or what is the level of significance for each independent variable to that particular dependent variable, and whether obviously there should not be any interrelationship between two independent variables as such. Otherwise the entire model goes for a toss. So thinking from that perspective, that we are able to actually think or think through the model. When I say model, I'm talking about a demand forecasting model, but it need not be only a demand forecasting model. It could be a very intelligent kind of inventory planning model also, wherein you derive the inventory norms purely from a causal relationship. Like, for example, in any regression analysis which is based on a causal relationship, you purely derive the inventory norms based on that. So I would say that while developing and implementing an intelligence system, focused on what is the trade-off. So if I'm investing on this intelligence system today, what is the payback, what is the ROI, what is the value addition that it actually brings, right? Whether it is going to streamline a process, whether it is going to save the cost, whether it is going to increase the margin delivery through increased availability. So these things will probably assume priority for me as far as going for any AI ML based tool or any intelligence system which is outside of the SAP and does the entire replenishment for me.
So now I come down to two questions which are directed to me in the panel. One is that Ranjan, somebody is asking about whether cloud-based systems or SaaS-based systems or enterprise system, which is what your recommendation is? What if you have to do it today, which one you will prefer? I mean,
So
I think
I
it's a
yeah
question, but we need to bring some
yeah
clarity in that.
let me take that question. So today, when you talk of speed and agility, I think it is given that that speed and agility will come more than often in cloud-based systems, SaaS-based systems, because there is a lot of experimentation which is happening today, and you have to create those minimum viable products, see if it works for you, because whatever a product could be fantastic in nature, but it might just not work for you in your environment, in your given situation. So you have to create a model, test it, try out, see if it works for you. And hence the cost of entry and the cost of exit and the time of entry and time of exit has to be kept in mind. That has to be very, very amazingly good for the organization, because you should not get stuck with a solution. It is no more the days where you go and buy the licenses, bring in an implementation partner, do the implementation over 6 months, go and source the infrastructure to host it, and then figure out that this doesn't work for you. It's a huge
So if
cost
you
of
have to
exit for you.
implement a system like this, how many weeks you will give it for it to go live in your enterprise?
Do you want me to answer, or Sandeep?
Yeah, I'm asking you. If you have to implement, how many weeks you will give it to get go live?
I think I think a few weeks, which means 3 to 4 weeks, is what is needed to be to create a minimum viable product to be able to showcase that it works for you.
All right.
Because as Swarnadeep said, it has to drive value. Either either ways, either it needs to deliver a higher business value, whether in terms of higher revenue or reducing cost or improving your gross margin. Whichever way, it has to show a value there. Once it shows a value there, then obviously it's all about scaling up and rollout.
Yeah, so there is an interesting question, and I think let me ask that to Swandeep because I think he'll be a good one to answer that. Somebody is asking that if I'm able to manage my DOH correctly for each category, I mean obviously I'm articulating it in a little better way. Will it save my cost of inventory? Will I save my investment on my inventory?
My counter question to that is that, whether I'm compromising on the availability or in-stock levels or not for reducing my DOH. That's the first point, because
Yeah.
the topic when we actually debate upon that, we need to optimize our inventory is on the presumption that you are not compromising on the customer service levels. So if that is a yes, then obviously, the cost of operations will definitely go down, which means that, you have lesser inwards, you have lesser outwards, you have actually lesser material to handle, and you are bringing in material which is actually delivering value. When I say value, obviously increasing the sell-throughs, increasing the revenues, driving the availability, and obviously the margins in the end, right? So and I would not say that reduction of DOH. I would probably like to term that as an optimization of DOH, right? Because if you have the underlying presumption of optimization of DOH is that the assortment that you're actually working with is more or less on the right line, right? Unless and until you have a massive assortment rationalization exercise where based on CRM activity, based on sell through and sales activity. So unless and until you do that, it is more or less that you go ahead with an assumption as a supply chain professional that the assortment that I'm working on is more or less right. I mean, 99%
Yeah.
right. That's
You know what? In a certain categories, for example, perishable, fresh, obviously you have a limitation that you can't go beyond a certain DOH period. I mean, now even in fashion, they're talking of fresh fashion where the DOH is not more than 30 to 45 days, I mean, maximum, you need to get rid of your inventory within that period. So I think those are, so what you're saying is we need a smart balance of DOH, good DOH within the limits and the fill rate. And if you're able to maintain that, there is a good possibility you can bring efficiency in your operation cost and investment in inventory.
once you do a policy making for perishables, the shelf life and the realistic estimates at what shelf life am I receiving the product from the supplier and at what sell throughs or what is the stock rotation period, right? So those are always taken into consideration while optimizing the DOH for those categories of product, right? So obviously, a DOH principle for a dairy, children, frozen, where it's in highly perishable item would be very different from, let's say, a shampoo or a soap.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we run out of time. We just, we won't be able to go further. And it is interesting discussion. I wish we had more time. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ranjan. And thank you, Swandeep, for your valuable time and your insights. And I think it was very enlightening discussion. I hope all of you who are attending will also enjoy it. In case you would like to go through a free workshop on Resense, you want to convert your supply chain into intelligence, you're welcome. Please write to resence@nihilent.com, and we'll be happy to talk to you and see how we can explore this further. And thank you once again, everybody. You joined us, and thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Sudesh, Ranjan, and Swandeep. Thank you for your valuable time.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Ajay.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, everyone.
Bye.